Commander Vex Toros occupied the command platform of the Merciless Void, his flagship and the pride of the Galactic Dominion's 7th Annihilation Fleet. His six-fingered hand tapped a rhythm against the polished obsidian of his console, while his secondary eyes surveyed the tactical readouts. His primary gaze remained locked on the holographic representation of the unassuming blue-green planet slowly rotating before him. "So, this is Earth, as the locals call it?" Vex queried, the universal translator struggling with the primitive, guttural sound. "Seems rather moist and utterly undefended." "Perfect," Strategic Officer Krell Barnack approached with studied caution. Everyone knew Commander Toros was inclined to vaporize messengers who disrupted his contemplation. "Yes, Commander. Long-range scans confirm minimal orbital defenses, rudimentary communication networks, and complete ignorance of our presence. The conquest should be, as they say in Fleet Academy, a stroll through the recreation gardens." Vex snorted through his breathing slits. "Your metaphors require refinement, Barnack, but your assessment appears correct. This species lacks even a unified planetary government. They are still squabbling over patches of dirt and liquid reserves." "Pathetic." The expansive viewscreen shifted to display various human activities, vehicles inching along endless gray pathways, clusters of basic structures, odd recreational pastimes involving spherical objects, and much aimless scurrying. "And the High Council desires us to trouble ourselves with conquering these creatures? Why not simply sterilize the surface and be done with it?" Vex asked rhetorically, his mandibles clicking in annoyance. Fleet Admiral Nora Zak, the sole officer who dared address Vex without formal deference, stepped forward. "Resources, Commander. The planet is abundant in biodiversity, rare minerals, and, crucially, water. The High Council deems it wasteful to simply destroy it. Besides," she added, with what passed for humor among their kind, "these humans might make acceptable pets or laborers. They appear remarkably adaptable despite their technological inferiority." Vex barked a sharp laugh. "Ha! With those grotesque external ears and that revoltingly exposed skin, they'd terrify the spawn clusters." But he nodded grudgingly. "However, the resource assessment is sound. Very well, we shall proceed according to the Dominion Conquest Protocol." He tapped a series of commands into his console, bringing up the invasion plan that had been flawlessly executed across 17 galactic sectors. Standard three-phase approach, orbital bombardment of military installations and government centers, followed by dropship deployment of shock troops, culminating in systematic territorial control. "I want planetary surrender within 3 solar cycles." 3 cycles seems generous, Commander, Officer Barnack ventured. "Our intelligence suggests their most advanced weapons are merely chemical propellant and crude atomic devices. They haven't even mastered gravity manipulation or consciousness transfer." Vex fixed all 4 eyes on Barnack, who immediately regretted speaking. "I do not rush art, Strategic Officer. 3 cycles grants us time to establish proper control without needless resource damage. Besides," he added with a dismissive wave of his sensory tentacles, "I promised my third mate I'd be home for the hatching festival. This little excursion is merely a convenient stop along the way." Admiral Zak reviewed the tactical overlay. "Sir, would you like the standard pre-invasion warning broadcast? The Ethical Conquest Directive does recommend." "Oh, please," Vex interrupted, rolling his primary eyes while his secondary ones continued monitoring the displays. "The ECD is for politicians and propaganda. We both know surprise yields superior results. When was the last time anyone actually enforced those directives? Never, that's when." He turned to his communications officer. "Maintain full stealth protocols. I want their first warning to be when our kinetic impactors start rearranging their geography." The bridge crew chuckled appreciatively, just enough to acknowledge the commander's wit, but not enough to seem disrespectful. Vex stretched his armored carapace and yawned, displaying rows of serrated teeth. "Prepare the fleet for combat deployment. I'll be in my quarters sampling that fermented beverage we confiscated from the Centauri traders. Alert me when we're in optimal bombardment position." As he strode toward the exit portal, Vex paused. "Oh, and someone prepare a suitable victory speech for transmission to the High Council." Something appropriately humble, yet acknowledging my tactical brilliance. You know the template. The massive doors slid shut behind him as the bridge erupted into efficient activity. Nobody noticed a small warning flag blinking on a tertiary data screen, a minor discrepancy between expected and observed communications traffic from the planet below. The attack fleet's preparation and journey to Earth occupied the next 12 hours aboard the Merciless Void, which passed in a frenzy of coordinated chaos. Weapons officers calibrated the kinetic bombardment arrays, while dropship pilots ran final simulations of atmospheric entry. The ship's massive engines hummed with barely contained energy as the fleet assembled into attack formation. Lieutenant Pax Morvo, head of biological warfare, scurried through the crowded corridors, balancing stacks of data slates. "Excuse me, priority research coming through," he shouted, narrowly avoiding a collision with a maintenance drone. "These humans are bizarrely resilient to standard toxins. We've had to synthesize custom bioweapons." Nobody paid him much attention. The pre-invasion excitement had gripped the crew, many of whom were veterans of a dozen successful conquests. Bookmakers were already taking wagers on how quickly Earth would surrender. "I've got 6 nutrition credits on total capitulation within 6 hours of first bombardment," boasted Security Chief Gr. Evander, his chitinous armor gleaming under the harsh lighting. "Too optimistic," countered Medical Officer Telerex. "Primitive species often have irrational resistance reflexes. I'll wager they last at least 12 hours before their leadership breaks." In the hangar bay, First Drop Commander Blazkorin inspected his troops. Row upon row of armored shock soldiers stood at attention, their exoskeletons pumped full of combat stimulants. "Remember, aim for their center mass. Intel says they keep their primary organs in their torsos. And watch for their projectile weapons. Primitive, but still capable of puncturing standard armor at close range." The fleet entered warp transit precisely on schedule, the fabric of spacetime folding around the 16 warships like crumpled cloth. Commander Vex watched from his private observation dome, sipping the confiscated Centauri liquor. The bittersweet liquid burned pleasantly down his 3 digestive tracts. "Computer, how long until we reach the target system?" he asked, his voice slightly slurred from the potent alcohol. "Arrival at Sol System in approximately 47 minutes, Commander," the ship's AI responded. "All systems operating at optimal invasion parameters." Vex nodded in satisfaction. Another conquest, another commendation, another step toward his ultimate goal, a seat on the High Council itself. This insignificant blue planet would be just one more stepping stone in his illustrious career. If only he'd paid more attention to those blinking warning indicators. The Merciless Void burst into normal space at the edge of the Sol System, trailing wisps of exotic particles as reality reasserted itself. The rest of the fleet followed in perfect formation, weapon systems coming online with practiced precision. Earth hung in the distance, a blue-green marble wrapped in wispy white clouds. "Commence stealth approach," Commander Vex ordered, now fully sobered and standing tall on the command deck. "Bring us into high orbit over their northern hemisphere. I want our first salvos to target their most developed population centers and military installations." The massive warships glided silently through space, their advanced cloaking technology rendering them invisible to Earth's primitive detection systems, or so they thought. "Sir," Communications Officer Lana of Rex called out, her voice tinged with confusion. "I'm detecting unusual activity in their orbital communications grid. They seem to be tracking us." Vex snorted dismissively. "Impossible. Their technology is centuries behind ours. They're probably tracking space debris or natural phenomena. Commencing bombardment in 3, 2, 1. Weapons Officer Drex Paulo announced, his finger hovering over the activation sequence. The first wave of kinetic impactors, essentially massive tungsten rods accelerated to near relativistic speeds, launched from the Dominion ships. They streaked toward Earth's surface, designed to devastate targets through sheer impact force rather than explosives. Clean, efficient, and utterly destructive. "Impact in 5 seconds, Drex announced smugly. The bridge crew waited for the satisfying visual confirmation of destruction. Instead, the tactical display showed something unprecedented. "Sir!" Strategic Officer Barnack shouted, all professional composure forgotten. The humans, they're intercepting our kinetic weapons. What? Vex bellowed, mandibles flaring in shock. That's not possible. How could they possibly? The view screen showed the impossible, Earth-based energy weapons firing with pinpoint accuracy, vaporizing the incoming projectiles before they could enter the lower atmosphere. Sir, we're being hailed, Communications Officer Vex announced, her voice trembling from multiple Earth governmental bodies simultaneously. Before Vex could respond, the main screen flickered and divided into several sections, each showing a different human leader. Their expressions ranged from stern determination to barely contained rage. "Attention alien vessels," a female human in a blue uniform stated coolly. "You have entered Earth-protected space and attempted an unprovoked attack on our planet. This constitutes an act of war under the United Earth Defense Accord." Wait. United what? Admiral Zack whispered frantically, checking her intelligence reports. "Our intel said they had no unified planetary government." A different human, this one wearing an elaborate military uniform decorated with colored ribbons, spoke next. "Your vessels have been targeted by our orbital defense grid. Power down your weapon systems immediately, or face the consequences." Vex stared at the screen in disbelief. This is some kind of primitive bluff. Their defensive capabilities can't possibly. His words were cut short as the ship rocked violently. Warning klaxons blared throughout the command deck. "Direct hit on our port weapons array." Damage Control Officer Trell Bindar shouted over the noise. "Shield capacity down 30%. That's not possible." Vex roared. "How could they penetrate our shields with their primitive technology?" The tactical display updated to show dozens, no, hundreds, of small craft launching from Earth's surface and from previously undetected orbital platforms. They moved with impossible speed and agility, their energy signatures unlike anything in the Dominion database. Admiral Zack turned to Vex, her exoskeleton pale with shock. "Commander, I believe our intelligence regarding Earth may have been significantly outdated." Another blast rocked the ship. The human-coordinated counterattack had begun, and the Galactic Dominion's 7th Annihilation Fleet was suddenly, incomprehensibly, on the defensive. "All ships!" Vex shouted into the fleet-wide comm, "activate secondary defensive protocols. This isn't going to be the easy conquest we anticipated." For the first time in his illustrious career, Commander Vex Toros felt something unfamiliar crawling up his spine, doubt. "We're still proceeding with the ground invasion," Admiral Zack demanded, her voice rising an octave higher than military protocol permitted. "Commander, with all due respect, our orbital position is compromised. 3 support vessels are already reporting critical damage." Commander Vex Toros slammed his fist against the tactical display, causing the hologram to flicker. "We proceed as planned. I will not be deterred by primitive luck and outdated intelligence reports." He turned to drop Commander Blas. "Launch the first wave immediately. Secure landing zones in their major population centers." Blas hesitated, just briefly enough to be noticeable, before saluting. "Yes, Commander." Dropships launching now. 500 assault craft punched through Earth's atmosphere, their heat shields glowing orange against the blue backdrop. Despite the unexpected orbital resistance, surely the ground war would proceed according to Dominion doctrine. These humans, however surprising their orbital defenses, were still soft-bodied creatures without natural armor or redundant organs. Drop Commander Blas's vessel was the first to touch down in what human maps identified as Central Park, New York City. The landing ramp descended with a hydraulic hiss, and the first wave of shock troops charged out, weapons primed. What they found was emptiness. "Commander, Blas tactical," he reported, confusion evident in his voice. "Landing zone appears deserted. No resistance, but also no civilians. Proceeding with caution." Similar reports flooded in from dropships worldwide, empty streets, abandoned vehicles, the occasional domestic animal wandering aimlessly. "Where are they?" Lieutenant Greg Vander muttered, his assault rifle sweeping across the eerily quiet cityscape. Population scans showed millions in this settlement alone. His question was answered with a deafening explosion as the ground beneath a nearby dropship erupted. The vessel disappeared in a fireball, taking 30 elite troops with it. Ambush! Blas roared into the comb. All units, defensive positions. The attacks came from everywhere and nowhere. Snipers fired from concealed positions in tall buildings. Explosive devices detonated beneath streets and vehicles. Small autonomous drones swarmed overhead, dropping precision munitions. They've evacuated the civilians and prepared the battleground, Blas realized aloud, ducking behind a toppled transport as energy weapons fire rained down. This wasn't a surprise attack at all. They were waiting for us. Aboard the Merciless Void, Commander Vex watched in growing horror as casualty reports flooded in from every landing zone. How is this possible? These humans shouldn't have detection technology capable of anticipating our arrival, let alone time to prepare such elaborate traps. Sir, Officer Barnack interjected, his voice hollow. I've been analyzing their communication patterns. It appears they've had some form of unified military response protocol for extraterrestrial threats for decades. What? Why would they? Vex's question was interrupted by an urgent transmission from Drop Commander Blas. Command, these humans, they're not just fighting with technology, they're adapting. They're picking up our weapons and using them against us. And their bodies, they keep fighting through injuries that would incapacitate any sensible species. I watched one continue fighting with a severed limb, laughing while applying some kind of field tourniquet. Vex stared at the tactical display in disbelief as red dots, his troops, blinked out one after another. They're not just defending, Admiral Zach whispered, horrified. They're hunting our forces systematically on the surface below. Drop Commander Blas fired desperately at an approaching group of humans wearing mismatched armor, some of it clearly salvaged from fallen Dominion troops. Their faces were streaked with dirt and blood, but their expressions showed something Blas had never seen on a battlefield before. They were smiling. Humans' counterattack and technological ingenuity. Commander, we're receiving emergency transmissions from all ground teams. The humans are deploying some kind of reverse-engineered technology, Communications Officer Rex reported, her voice cracking with panic as she struggled to keep up with the incoming reports. On the main view screen, chaotic footage from surviving helmet cams showed human military forces advancing with shocking confidence. Some wielded captured Dominion weapons, but others carried devices of distinctly Earth origin that nonetheless fired energy pulses disturbingly similar to Dominion tech. Impossible, Vex whispered, then louder, impossible. They couldn't have reverse-engineered our technology this quickly. Admiral Zach, reviewing data streams with growing dread, looked up sharply. Sir, they didn't just start today. According to signal analysis, they've been intercepting and studying our communication protocols for years. Vex bellowed, how could they possibly know about us years ago? We only discovered this planet 18 cycles ago ourselves. Junior Science Officer cleared her throat nervously. Commander, permission to speak freely. What is it? Vex snapped. Sir, I've been comparing our intelligence reports with observed reality. It appears that our initial scans detected primitive radio broadcasts and early-stage rocket technology, but those scans were from approximately 70 Earth years ago. The command deck fell silent. Are you telling me, Vex said with dangerous quietness, that we launched an invasion based on 70-year-old intelligence before anyone could respond? Weapons Officer Drex shouted. Incoming massive energy signature launching from Earth's surface. The ship rocked violently as something slammed into their shields. Alarm klaxons screamed throughout the vessel. What was that? Demanded Vex. Some kind of fusion-powered kinetic weapon. Tactical Officer Barnack reported incredulously. But it's surrounded by a field that's mimicking our own shield frequency. It passed right through our defensive screens. On Earth's surface, a woman in a lab coat stood in an underground bunker, surrounded by banks of equipment. General Marcus Blake looked over her shoulder at the monitoring screens. Dr. Rivera, your adaptive shield penetrator worked perfectly, he said with grim satisfaction. Dr. Elena Rivera nodded, fingers flying across holographic controls. 50 years of studying their transmissions, 20 years of cautious technological development. We weren't about to let them catch us unprepared. She glanced at another screen showing salvaged alien technology being integrated into human defense systems in real time. Deploy the EMP cannons next. Let's see how their neural interfaces handle a sudden power surge. Back on the merciless void, Vex watched in horror as human ships, smaller than Dominion vessels but moving with impossible agility, launched from concealed bases on Earth's moon. They swarmed toward the invasion fleet, deploying weapons that seemed cobbled together from multiple technological traditions but worked with devastating effectiveness. They're not just defending, Admiral Zach realized aloud. They're counterattacking. They're coming for our ships. Commander Vex Toros, for the first time in his decorated military career, felt something he'd never experienced before: fear of defeat. Commander's realization about the fatal mistake of attacking Earth. Commander Vex Toros stood frozen on the command deck watching as his mighty invasion fleet crumbled around him. 3 support ships had already gone dark, their command signals abruptly silenced by weapons that shouldn't exist on such a primitive world. The remaining vessels reported critical systems failures as human counterattacks targeted their vulnerabilities with surgical precision. Commander Strategic Officer Barnack approached cautiously, data tablet trembling in his hands. "I've completed the historical analysis you requested. It seems we made a catastrophic error in our intelligence assessment." "Speak plainly," Vex hissed, all 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display where more red indicators blinked out by the minute. "Sir, Earth is not just another conquest target. In our database there's a special classification flag that was overlooked during mission planning." Barnack swallowed hard. "They're designated as a Death World species." The command deck went silent, even the alarm seemed to dim momentarily. "A Death World species?" Admiral Zach whispered, her exoskeleton paling. "That's impossible. The High Council wouldn't send us against a Death World without proper. The flag was buried in a subsystem." Barnack continued, his voice barely audible. "It seems the initial survey team placed the warning, but it was administratively categorized under low priority observations due to a clerical error." Vex collapsed into his command chair, mandibles slack with shock. "Death World, of course it explains everything." The pieces fell into place with terrible clarity. Earth wasn't just another habitable planet, it was a crucible of evolution, a world where every living thing survived against impossible odds. Predator and prey engaged in endless evolutionary arms races where the dominant species had clawed its way to supremacy through relentless adaptation and sheer stubborn persistence in their immune systems. Medical Officer Telerex chimed in, horrified realization dawning. Their bodies routinely fight off millions of microscopic invaders daily. Their cellular repair mechanisms, their pain tolerance, their ability to adapt to almost any environment. They evolved on a world that's constantly trying to kill them, and we, Vex said with dawning horror, just gave them a common enemy to unite against. A new alert sounded harsh and insistent. The main screen shifted to show human ships targeting the merciless void itself, not just targeting boarding. Multiple breach points reported simultaneously along the ship's hull. Commander Communications Officer Rex reported, her voice tight with fear, "I've been analyzing their cultural transmissions from the past 70 years. These humans, they've been imagining this exact scenario for centuries. Their entertainment media is filled with stories about alien invasions and how they defeat them. They've been mentally preparing for us before they even knew we existed." Vex stared at the approaching human boarding craft on the tactical display, small jury-rigged vessels that had no business challenging a Dominion capital ship, yet here they were successfully breaching his supposedly impenetrable defenses. "We chose the worst possible species to attack," he whispered. "These humans don't just survive, they thrive on adversity. Retreat and humiliating aftermath for the aliens. All ships, this is Commander Vex Toros. Execute immediate emergency withdrawal. Repeat, emergency withdrawal pattern Omega." Vex shouted into the fleet-wide communication system, his voice cracking with unprecedented stress. Warning lights bathed the command deck in pulsing red as damage reports flooded in from all decks. Human boarding parties had penetrated 3 levels, already fighting with a ferocity that sent veteran Dominion warriors retreating in disarray. "Sir, drop." Commander Blas is requesting emergency extraction for surviving ground forces. Communications Officer Vex reported, struggling to maintain composure but denied. Vex snapped, Tell him to surrender." The humans seemed to take prisoners he couldn't meet. Admiral Zach's shocked gaze, "We can't risk more ships descending into the atmosphere, not with their anti-aircraft capabilities." The merciless voyage shuddered violently as its engines strained against Earth's gravitational pull. 3 more Dominion vessels attempted to activate their warp drives, only to discover that the humans had somehow deployed a localized field disruption that prevented faster-than-light escapes. "They're hurting us," Tactical Officer Barnack realized with horror, "forcing us toward their lunar installations." "Full emergency thrust." Vex ordered, "Divert all power including life support to engines." The massive flagship lurched forward, breaking formation as it desperately clawed its way out of Earth's defensive perimeter. Behind them 5 more Dominion ships exploded in spectacular fireballs as human weapons found their mark. The survivors limped after the flagship, trailing debris and venting atmosphere on communication screens throughout the ship. The faces of human military leaders appeared stern, determined, but notably not gloating. Attention Dominion forces. A gray-haired human in a decorated uniform addressed them. This is General Helena Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. Your invasion has failed. You have two options: surrender now and be treated according to interstellar prisoner protocols, or retreat beyond the boundary of our solar system. You have 5 minutes to decide their offering terms. Admiral Zach asked incredulously. We attempted to bombard their civilian centers without warning. Vex slammed his fist on the console. It's a trap. They want us to surrender so they can study our technology. He turned to the remaining bridge crew. Continue evasive retreat. Get us out of this cursed system. 48 hours later, the pitiful remnants of the once mighty 7th Annihilation Fleet limped across the outer boundary of the Sol system. Of 16 warships, only 6 remained operational, all heavily damaged. The merciless void itself had lost 30% of its hull integrity and was operating on minimal life support as they prepared for the emergency warp jump that would take them to the nearest Dominion outpost. Commander Vex received one final transmission from Earth. It wasn't a military communication but appeared to be broadcasting on all frequencies of PUBL. IC message on screen appeared. A diverse group of humans standing before a blue flag bearing the image of Earth. One step forward, her expression resolute but not vengeful. To the Galactic Dominion in all spacefaring civilizations, Earth stands ready to defend itself against any aggression. We seek peaceful relations with all species, but make no mistake, we will respond with overwhelming force to any threat. Consider carefully before you test our resolve. Again, as the transmission ended, Vex slumped in, his command chair, defeat etched into every plate of his exoskeleton. Not only had they failed to conquer Earth, but they had revealed Dominion technology and tactics to a species that had proven terrifyingly adept.